thank you all so much for coming. If you don't know us, obviously Sophie's explained us a bit on the recruitment side, but I'll explain a bit more about the podcast. So the podcast started about 4 years ago in lockdown. Everyone was working from home. We couldn't do meetup events like this, so we thought we'll just do it online. So we created a podcast where we got leaders together, discuss their passions, challenges, just what's going on in the industry. As you guys know, the industry is constantly changing, hence why we've got 500 episodes at this point. And we've recently started up our security series. So we thought, what better way to get the series going than doing it in person and in real life. I know a few people here have been on the podcast before. Give us a wave if you've been on the podcast. Hopefully they say good things to you if you speak to them later about the podcast. But without further ado, we'll get stuck into today's topic, which is the future of security. So would my lovely guests join me on the stage? Amazing. So we will start with some introductions if you don't know our panel already. So Bernard, we'll stick with you first.
Okay, so I start. What an honor, thanks. So I'm Bernard Helou. You can hear it, I'm French. I've been working in Schibsted for 4 years, 3 years at Lendo and 1 year at Schibsted Media. Before that, I've been working as a consultant, mostly 10 years in Paris, so working with the biggest big companies there. What else to say about myself? I'm married, 1 wife, 2 children. Simple. Always mention, never know. And I live in Uppsala, so a bit outside Stockholm. And I'm really happy to be here, really exciting to talk about the future of cybersecurity and see what AB has prepared for us.
Perfect. Georgios.
Yeah, hello, I'm Georgios Kriparos. I'm currently CISO of Einride the last 2 years. I've been there a bit more than 2 years. I've been in the security industry a bit less than 20 years. I got my hands dirty with telecom initially, well, education a little bit, telecom, and later on in the finance sector, especially in fintechs. I've been in startups for 10 years, I think now. I'm a geek and an engineer at heart. That's what I studied. That's what I enjoy. So you might understand it when I'm talking later on. But I definitely enjoy, the leadership role. I also have 1 wife, 2 children.
But not the same.
No. Well, I don't know. Maybe we should sync later on.
Yeah, we don't want to start.
It's away some days, so I don't know.
We don't want to start the podcast with an argument on stage. But lovely. Last but not least, Vida.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Happy, for having me here. Vida Ahmadi, I am Director for Cybersecurity and Electrolux. My focus area is in data security, and I have a strong background in academic, working as a researcher in cybersecurity, and then decided to move to industry or make my hands dirty and become part of the problem.
Amazing. So if none of you have listened to the podcast before, the kind of usual setup is everyone's prepared a question and we'll make our way through the panel for those questions, which is exactly what's going to happen today. At the end, we will open it up to the floor for a Q&A. So if anyone's got any burning questions, remember those and we'll send a microphone through afterwards. But we'll start with our panel's questions first. And Vida, we'll start with your question. And you asked, cyber attacks are becoming increasingly sophisticated and targeted. What strategies and best practices can organizations adopt to stay ahead of evolving threats and maintain a robust security posture? So kick us off.
Yeah, I am a true believer that security is not a cost, it's an investment. And I want to stick with that because what we want to improve in future and what is, in the industry, you see the budget for cybersecurity is a little before incident, and when incident hit the organization, the budget increase. So I would say the best strategy is be proactive and do the more risk-based approach. Find the risk area, where are your weakest part, and do the regular risk assessment, vulnerability assessment, penetration testing, find your weakest link, and the top risk in your organization need to be addressed first. we never could have 100% security, but if we follow the risk approach, we could have a good prioritization on what is matter most for the organization. So I think the best strategy is investing on a proactive action, invest on human, because I think human are the weakest link in every security.
What are your stance on it?
Yeah, I agree. Investing in the human. I usually tell my management team, like, if you give us money, yes, we will make sure we use them, but you cannot buy security. I cannot buy a box, plug it in, turn it on, bot security. You can buy yourself a security team, maybe, or rent it, depending on how you see human resources. And then they can help you. I agree with everything you said about investment, but I was thinking on my way here that we all know that we need to eat well, exercise, invest in our children, families, and everything. But sometimes you go to the doctor and the doctor tells you have to change your diet. And then you really change your diet. I believe that the majority of organizations do this, and they will continue doing this. It's part of the human nature, I think, unfortunately, for us especially. I usually say never leave a good incident go to waste. Right? So sometimes you just have to wait for that incident. I will finish with this saying that we see advanced threats now, and we see more advanced ways of doing phishing, more advanced exploitation of systems and all of this. But eventually, if you look at it, even like the latest instances we had with the Akira ransomware and so on and so forth, it all starts with accounts. It all starts with some password, some MFA code, some human aspect. So if you were to invest in one thing, if you only have money for one thing, really strengthen the authentication and authorization part of your organization, and don't allow exceptions. And I don't want to have MFA because I don't want to carry this extra little hardware token with me. If you're in a security leadership role, just put your foot down on that one, I would say.
Yeah, I just want to start when you were talking about what the budget before and after incident. I really was thinking that you would say the best way to get money is to create an incident yourself.
That's also a good idea.
I really thought so. I was like, I'll think about it. But
make sure they don't find out.
Yeah, you just need to hide your tracks. Yeah, when it comes to investment, of course, it's always important. There is one. I agree on that. I'll get back to it, but I just want to underline one thing where I don't like the way, maybe, or I kind of disagree with the way you said it. People are the weakest link. I mostly see it as, because you can't do much on a weakest link, but if we see it as a first line of defense, that's where we need to strengthen. That's where we need to invest. So I think this is one important thing. And I have a topic later on how to around people. But the other question when it comes to investment is where to invest. You can't invest everywhere. The threat landscape you mentioned is exploding more and more. We're getting threats from everything. Even the protections that we put have weaknesses and create even more threat. So it's just like a snowball growing. So I think one of the key topic is to understand what threat are we concerned about. Is my threat about people's authentication because I have a weakness there? Is my threat about a state who's going to attack me? Is my threat about ransomware? So just understanding the kind of priorities so that we know what to tackle, where to invest, because if we just go after all the threats, then I personally don't know how to cope if everything becomes important, because I don't know how to get the money for it, but also how to have the teams do it at the same time. Yeah, that's my take out.
But don't you think that regardless where the threat is coming for, the majority of the times it will hit the human first? Like, it can be that you're going to go to an unpatched server or something else.
Most of the leakage have been, or the incidents have been through human, because that's maybe in percentage the most common in a company. But technologies change. So there has also been exploits without human behind. Breaches that have been done just purely technically. It happens. And maybe it's more difficult to find, but human, you can OSINT them, you can find a lot of things, you can manipulate them in a way. So that is one thing. I'm not saying it's not the thing not to invest in, but on the contrary, because that's a common denominator. But what to invest on them? Should we talk to them about MFA, as you mentioned? Should we talk to them about VPN networks, not to connect from anywhere? Should we talk to them about, and this is kind of the list, what are the priorities?
Okay. Yeah.
So that's why the risk-based approach is the way to go. I think it's when you are talking about a different threat, you are just listing the highest risk you have, and then you can invest on the highest risk rather than considering to all risk, because no company has unlimited budget to address all the risks, but you need to prioritize based on the importance and impact on the business to operate. So that's why it shows where you should invest if you follow the risk-based approach, and the human is one of the good investment because of the technology advancement and the success rate of the social engineering attack. So that's one of the parts that I think it's good to consider for investment. But yes, which area to invest, maybe we need to discuss more about what are the threats you see from that different links you have.
Exactly. And this was definitely my point.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, you obviously touched a little bit there on the human element of security, and Bernard, that links nicely into your question. And you asked, how do organizations address security training effectiveness, including the ownership of training tools and strategies, the extent of follow-up measurements on individual improvement, and the perceptions of overall effectiveness, along with subsequent actions taken based on these assessments. So tell us more.
I didn't realize my question was so long. But if I may make it more simple or rephrase it just so I can understand it myself, it's basically, how do we do trainings? How do we ensure we're sending the right trainings to the right people? We work in a company that has a lot of functions. We have tech people, we have finance people, we have HR, talents acquisition, we have tech people I mentioned already, right? I have a very short memory. We have journalists. They all work with our systems, but they don't work the same way with our systems. And so if we consider these people as the first line of defense, we can't equip them with the same tools to fight, or we can't teach them the same way. And this is what's interesting, depending on how companies do trainings. We can just do it for compliance and send a random training and just say, check. People do it, don't do it. I've sent it, I've done my job. I shall train them, I've trained them. Not my problem if they do it or not. But does that really do something? I'm not quite sure from a threat or exposure perspective. But then you need to take it a bit further. What kind of trainings is needed for each type of people? And what should I train them today according to the threats that is around them? So, and how do I also check that they have improved in their way, right? It's like you go to school, you get a test and you get a grade and then you move forward. And I'm not saying that we're at school, but I say that we should also improve the way we're training people as they go.
Yeah. Security awareness, security training is a topic I hate talking about and I love talking about. I primarily hate it because it's so difficult. And because I'm not 100% still persuaded that it actually gives dividends of what you invest in it. So you really have to know why you're doing it. So I agree. If you're doing it for compliance reasons, do the absolute minimum thing that you need to achieve your compliance goal and not annoy people, so that when you have another security initiative, they don't have a negative reaction to you. If you actually do see the value in specific security awareness, then you should do it correctly. And I was thinking how how you teach people, how we learn as humans, right? Either we're interested in something and we will really have undivided attention to it, and we're like, take a book, sit down and study. I don't know how many people you have like that in your company, probably not that many. The other is if you have like some sensory trigger, like there is a smell, something that reminds you, or like a touch, or like a conversation, or something that touched you, like your sensors, let's say. The other is if something touched your feelings, if it got you sad, scared, happy, like you had a response to this. There's other ways that I did something and then I got a positive reinforcement, like good job type of thing. So people like different things. I thought that you want one thing and you apply it to like the positive reinforcement. If you do, for example, positive reinforcement to me, I will think that you're manipulating me and you're trying to treat me like a child. I hate that. Don't ever come to tell me good job. But the majority of people like the good job type of thing, right? So what I'm saying is it's a bit different. One thing that I have learned that it really helps is if you tell stories, because everybody loves stories, and that works very well with the feeling aspect of it. Like people will remember a story. I remember, I'll say this. I was talking to a friend of mine who was a CISO, and we were trying to arrange a lunch in the previous company. And I said, okay, wrap up, tell me this, or send me a message, because I'm going up on stage to my company. I'm going to talk to them about BCP, business continuity planning, on a Friday afternoon. And he's like, Friday afternoon, you're going to tell people about BCP. Good. Why are you doing this to the poor people? And then I went up on stage. I spoke only for 10 or 15 minutes, and I came down and I said, okay, they actually liked it, because I told them a story. I didn't say, here's, we do this first, and then we do that, and then we do this other thing. I told them a story about how this can impact the specific business, the specific company, and they could relate to it somehow. They were like, okay. So you make it a bit more fun. So I would go to specific groups. I would probably do like a general compliance thingy, and then I would say, okay, finance has specific needs, HR needs specific needs. I'll finish with this. Actually, today or yesterday, I sent a message to the executive leadership team of my company, not executive, the leadership team, around 30 or 40 people. And I said, you haven't done well with your compliance training, so we will take 101 training sessions with each one of you. This doesn't scale. If I was like a 100,000 people company, it doesn't scale, but it's definitely going to give them this 101 undivided attention. I'm going to try to trigger some sensory, well, I'm not going to bring smells and stuff in the room, but something that they can really remember. I'm going to tell them a story about how, I don't know, MFA is important or something else. And I think that will probably work better than just sending them a video and say, watch this thing for 30 seconds or 30 minutes or whatever. By the way, I absolutely hate the yearly 10, 20 minutes, 1 hour type of trainings. I think this is just, even for me, it's a waste of time.
I can't agree more. Just spotting the people, taking the time with the people to tell them the examples that happen to others with the same job family or in the same company but somewhere else, but just so they can, it doesn't only happen to others, right? In all the stories, it never happens to me, or rarely, right? We're one in how many billion we are. But if I say it happens to your neighbor, look, that's how he's feeling. We already create the sense of, okay, that didn't fall far from me.
And it's very important, if you're going to do that, try to find the same industry.
Yeah.
Don't say like, if you're working in finance, don't say like, oh, this manufacturing company had this problem. No, say this bank had this problem. I'm sorry, I'm going to stop. I'm talking a lot. When I joined Einride, I told them about the Maersk story. The first leadership meeting that I had, I told them, okay, here's what happened to a company. And I told them all the story. And I told them it cost them 300 million. And I told them the board went on a stage and talked about it. And they had this incident response, blah, blah, blah. And I said, do you know which company was that? I think half of them were snoring until that point. And when I told them, okay, it's our biggest customer, and that's why they want us to have security, they were like, okay. So this is not just for banks and advanced people.
I agree with you in the awareness and targeted awareness, because the training should be innovative. It should not be boring, 10 minutes watching the video over and over and the same things. And I am sure after clicking on all of them, if you do for instance, if you had run a phishing training, and then you send a phishing simulation to test if they are actually learn, what do you think? How big will the percentage of people actually fall for it?
Yeah.
It's important. Sometimes you need to have like a measures. When you do the training, it's not just a tick and it's done because I have to do it because my manager will check, it will impact on my performance, whatever. The training should have the target. It needs to build the culture of the security mindset. So that's the differences between just having some simple training. It's like, okay, let's do this job and go. But we need to have kind of innovative in the way we do that awareness training to resonate with the people. And of course, when you exemplify with different storytelling or exemplify that, it will resonate with the people.
Yeah.
So that's the important part that need to be considered in the training. Now we have a lot of technology advancement. Why not use them in training people and get the use of it? So it has a value. I absolutely not in the favor of using different old days awareness training just because we have it, because it doesn't work and people will fall. And I actually, in my previous job, I had the discussion with some of my colleagues. They said, I passed the phishing training, why I should take it again? Because you fail in a phishing simulation, how you pass the training and still you fall for fish? That's a question we need to bring to attention, because people need not do it by, technical people just click, click, click.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
not even think.
Exactly. And I like what you said. I don't remember what you said. Hold on. I liked it. Yeah,
it's about how you
it-
make people feel, you know.
yeah.
It's not about what you say.
It has to have a
like-
purpose, you said, and that's exactly it, right? And I put the compliance purpose aside, because if we all agreed in the beginning that people are important, it's the first line of defense. It has to have a purpose for them, other than just me ticking the box, because that's what make them understand why they're doing it, adapting it for them, etc. And this totally makes sense. But sometimes it doesn't always scale. But that's an effort you have to do.
Have you tried phishing simulations? Do you do phishing simulations? And the same applies for you guys. Do you do phishing simulations in your companies?
Yeah.
I have this discussion internal. Do you?
We do, but I feel that's a betrayal to people.
Yes.
Yeah. Right.
So I have a person in my team who absolutely loathes it. He's like, as long as I work here, we will never do phishing simulation, or I will quit. So it's like I have to. If I don't want to lose personnel, I cannot do phishing simulations. But I understand, because a lot of people see it almost as cheating on them, and you're tricking me, and then you're not trusting me, and So I know why we do them and why it's important, but a lot of times people can.
So that's why we need to build a culture, because it's about we are in the same boat. When it comes to the security, and if it hits the organization, everyone will be impacted, because the organization will impact. So we need to build, it's a team sport. So when something hit, everyone will, and it's not a blame game why you fail. It's just giving more task or more one-to-one talking, explaining why it's important, because I think the time you invest on a people has a value, because those people feel they are involved and they are part of the protection. And of course, the people are I will say they are weakest link and strong links, because they can protect your system. If they are not falling for those kind of attacks, they are protecting your system. And at the end of the day, they are the one running your business. And if they are not running their business and don't do their job correctly, none of us in a security team will have a job to do. So it's a business and security. There is a need for balance and building the culture, which we are in the same team. The security culture, like seeing the security people as a policing others in organization, it's a failed culture.
We have gotten a lot of perspective around training the people, the employees, but I think I just want to touch upon that. There is also a perspective on how do I train my security team to increase, to be better, to keep on top of the current trends, the current problems, so that we do apply a good level of security in the company. And that's a totally different topic, I think.
I have a very funny story about trust and employees and who do we trust and all of this. There was the most senior engineer in the previous company that I was working, staff engineer type of person, and he was completely rejecting ideas of having any sort of antivirus on his laptop and device management. And why don't you trust your engineers? The engineers are the smartest people in the room. They know technology. Why are you? Blah, blah. A lot of things like that, right? And at some point he comes to me and he says, you know what? I had this idea. What if I run it unrelated to what I said before, a phishing simulation? So he created a phishing email. He created a campaign. He monitored. I had nothing to do with it. I just said, okay, do it. So he does the test. He sends it out to everybody as a way to prove to me that I'm an idiot, that I don't trust our people. And then he collected data about who clicked on the PDF that he sent and who reported, because we were always saying like report, we wanted to see the responsiveness of the company, right? Who will report it and how fast will the IT department block this email? Well, the majority of people who clicked on it, anyone can imagine what department of the company was it?
Tech.
Engineering, the developers. There was another two very senior engineers that actually clicked twice.
Just to be sure.
Just to be sure that I didn't click wrong the first time. And we had also a security engineer who clicked on it. So then I didn't prove to him, but I said, okay, do you still think that we should trust the engineers? Even though I like them and I think they're great and I think they're very smart. Actually, the person who reported, the first person who reported, who was it? Which department do you think it was? No? That's a good guess. Well, sales is a bit far-fetched, but marketing, which, we don't give a lot of credit to marketing. We think they don't understand technology and all this.
Because they never get mails and they go to one of the...
Or they treat everything as spam, right? They get so much. But it was marketing 1 minute after the email was sent out. So, phishing simulations, even though my colleague hates them, they kind of prove some point.
It is the help, maybe anonymously you use the data and they are giving you the valuable insight about how you can treat and how you can build a culture for the security and for protecting the most valuable assets, because that's matter at the end.
I think our biggest takeaway there is that if you think Georgios has done well today, don't tell him. He won't take it well. Georgios, your question is next, and you asked what skills do you consider that will be the most vital for security positions in the coming years?
Yeah, so for a couple of years I was recruiting. Currently I'm not recruiting, so I'm a bit more calm. I distinguish there's 1,000 security roles, right? You can do threat intelligence, analyst, SOC specialist, information specialist, GRC. Yeah, there's thousands of roles right now. But I group them in three things. It will be a deeply technical role, some type of security engineer, security analyst type of role, or a security governance, information security type of role, or a security leadership role. So different requirements for all three. For all three, the one requirement that I think you should have, apart from that generic thing of what is the security thing, I do believe they have to have technical background. I don't believe that you should have, I don't think that you should be a hacker. I don't think you should be a developer. I don't think you should be like an uber geek, but you have to understand how computers work, how technology kind of works. You need to know now that we're moving into AI, how this AI thing works. On a high level, at least you know how to interact with it, what you expect from it. For the engineering roles, I think if you don't invest in learning about cloud and coding, if you don't know these two things, you will be unemployable in 10 years. Right now, you can still be employed. You will be unemployable. Even the most traditional organizations will have some level of cloud, even if it's private, and they will create this developer experience type of organization. So you will need to be able to code and know how the cloud works.
When you say all, you mean even the banks?
Yes, absolutely. I was working at Klarna when Klarna did the migration to to from on-prem to AWS, and it was the first financial company in Sweden. And back then, everybody thought they were crazy. Now I'm hearing from people that almost all banks have some type of cloud infrastructure. They usually go to to Azure, because that's the easiest transition from Microsoft to Microsoft, from Microsoft Exchange to Microsoft Azure, whatever. Yes, and I think even banks. I think only the government might not be able to do this because of this Swedish law, the Säkerhetslagen, but they will build internal cloud, private cloud. I'm sure about that. The second is the governance people. The governance people, they have to have some understanding of IT. They cannot just be high-level risk or project managers. They have to have some level of IT, and they have to have an understanding of AI. Again, not machine learning, not deep technical details, but they have to understand that you cannot secure data, I put it in a folder. Machine learning is like data lakes, and data is all over the place. They have to be all over the place if you want to take advantage of the technology. The leadership is the more interesting because it applies to me and I'm not good at it. So this is like note to myself. Emotional intelligence, so understanding people and understanding how they feel. And try to learn from the younger generations. I see like I'm above 40, and I think we genuinely have a problem with everybody who is less than 40, because we used to be, well, when I grew up, it was like my boss told me to do so, I did it. Good luck finding anyone below 35 who will tell him do X, and he will be like, yes, sir. No way. No, especially in our industry, because there is options, and people will ask, why am I doing it? Why should I had a guy who during an incident said, I'm sorry, but I have booked to go to play paddle right now. I cannot do that. I'm like, an incident, a security incident, and he told me I have to go paddle. So you really have to understand the young generation. I have a hard problem with my daughters, even though they're very young, and I think I have the same type of problem. So we have to learn like the people aspect of this. Apart from the normal, like you have to understand business and finance and budgets and all of this that always existed there.
I'm young, I don't have that problem.
So I have a for persuading you then.
But yeah, I will just take a slightly different angle. So if we look at the history of things, there are competencies that are always needed, right? We always talk about cybersecurity culture, and I mean, you started your career a while ago, and probably people were the first things pointed out, like you shouldn't make mistakes, and also working about culture and everything. This is, yeah, you have a job for a while. It will just change the way we do it. I mostly agree with what you said, but I think there is also the jobs that we have no idea what they will be, because it's new technologies. You mentioned AI, and there will be AI security something to dedicate it to that technology. And I think many roles that we have today, cloud security, didn't exist 10 years ago, or not the same way. And then what kind of jobs will be in 10 years? We have no idea. All that we kind of know, if we look retrospectively, is that a word? Is about adding things in the teams. So every time there's a new law, then there's a new regulation, there's a new requirement, and okay, that goes in security, and we add stuff layer by layer. So the core things are here. They'll probably be there in 10, 15 years. And on top of that, we'll add a lot of other skills about technologies that are emerging, AI, but probably technologies that we have no idea what they are. I mean, when you talk about 5 years ago, people talking about AI were like, far away, that will never exist. It's reality. Yeah.
Oh, you have a point there.
Yeah.
So was this CEO, who was the NVIDIA CEO that said that, no, someone else. No, anyway, another guy who said it's the first generation that we don't know what to teach our children, because when they will go out to the market, it will be relevant.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have a good point there.
It happens sometimes, not often, but sometimes.
Yeah. Even though you're less than 40, yeah.
I think that will change. The job market will change, and we have seen some jobs actually there's no need for them, and they are adjusted with the new need in the in today technology. But if we are looking at let's consider as a foundation of security, identity access management, it never die.
Yeah.
right? The way we are doing is change. We are using technology to address it indifferently. It might be in future we go with the zero trust. Still, it's based on identity access management. So there are still foundation, there are exist and they will exist. But the way we are treating, the way we are addressing that, the technology advancement make it much easier. For instance, for access control, you always had access controls, and these are the things we need to know. The foundation, I would say, I agree with your approach that saying people need to know how computer is working, because this is a foundation. We need a foundation. All the new technology, new jobs comes based on the foundation. Some of them needs that deep understanding of telecommunication, how the protocols works, and so on. So there, from my perspective, there will be a new job which are not exist, but still we will have like 60-70% of existing job in security coming in future as well, but maybe the approach will change. So we always circle back to what we had before, right?
It depends also. One thing I forgot to mention is the size of the company, right? If you are 100,000 employees, then yeah, you don't need to know any of this. You just need to know how to be good in networking and good in commercial and financial aspects. Maybe it doesn't matter if you have not even opened a computer in your life. But I mean, think about it. If you would go to a hospital, maybe the CEO of the hospital, it doesn't have to be a doctor. But if you go to a clinic, probably the head of that clinic will be a doctor. It's better be a doctor, I would say. So that's how I see it as well.
And I think what you said is interesting in looping back to the previous point about we do the same things again and again because the threat landscape changed, because the technology changed. But in the end, it's a cycle, which is also important, tying back to the people, to train them so they get still in the trend and can maintain the solution moving forward and secure them properly. So I think that's a great way of also showing that even when we're talking about the future of things in the past, we see that training the people, because if they're good today doesn't mean they will be good in 5 years, is also super important.
Which is also why a lot of people say focus on being able to learn instead of learning the things. I took a little bit more, learn this, but yeah, it's true. You have to learn how to learn, and then I think the emotional aspect, I truly believe in that, because it changes very much from.
Yeah, it's cybersecurity area is the ever-evolving area, and the people are standing in that area need to be passionate for learning new technology and new things, because every day you get a new technology, and to stay relevant in the market, you need to adapt and learn. So it's always learning and adapting. I would say it's never ending, specifically for a security area.
Because that's the game.
Yeah.
I mean, you reach a point where the purpose of a lot of people is to break you. So if you don't keep up moving, then they go before, right?
Yeah, it's the security is a never-ending game, because you always need to fight with invisible enemies. That's why we need to make sure we are secure enough, because you never know how the threat will impact it. You do some analysis, you do some risk assessment, but always there are some incident. So that's the important aspect of the security, and I think the people goes to that area are passionate. Need to be passionate, not just go to that because the security is demanding job now in the market. Let's go for security. You need to have a passionate, because the technology change. You need to learn the new things, and you need to learn and adapt and adjust with what's happening in the market. So it's not a one-time job. Maybe some areas you just go to get some education, go to market, and do the same things over and over. But security is not.
I say this to my team: if you came here for recognition, flowers, and trophies, you will never get them. It's a very unrewarded unless you become a security influencer, which I don't know how many of you are in that industry. I'm not, unfortunately. But it's a word that you will never get a tap on the back. That's why I do this job, because I never get a tap on the shoulder. So yeah, it's unword. So you have to have passion. You have to be motivating yourself. And that's what I tell my team. Like, I can tell you all the great job of the world, but don't expect the whole company to come and tap you on the shoulder. You have to find the internal motivation.
Let's create a TikTok about cybersecurity.
There are several of them. I mean,
Yeah.
go to. There's so many in LinkedIn.
I'm young, but I'm not trendy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but just to we're moving maybe a bit from the initial question, but it's also an industry where we plan for the worst, because we know things can happen or will happen. You were talking about business continuity plan. It's exactly that. You know? You get onto a plane, you don't expect it to crash. However, you're still listening to the woman telling you can exit here and there, and here's your life vest, right? So it's kind of the same also in cybersecurity, which is not so many industries who have that. Like, plan for bad things to happen and how you can get back from it.
And then the door of the Boeing opens, and you're flying with the door open, right?
Just to get some fresh air.
But you see how resilient that team was, right? They were very calm.
Yeah.
I don't know what sort of training they did before, apart from the, these things. Maybe they told them something else.
Maybe they didn't notice it open.
Or they completely lost it when they saw it up. You know what I'm talking about? There was a plane that was flying and the door open. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I guess we've come to the end of the panel's question. Sophie has got the microphone to come around if anyone's got any questions. So stick your hand up if you've got something.
Hi, my name is Sabina, and I have a lot of questions. I'm working in tech, and I'm writing about tech, about IT security and awareness in people way. But my question is, my daughter, she's telling me, Mom, she's 10 years old, and she say, why is so few really great to explain about tech and IT security? And why do not everyone up to date and understand how computer works? And she's only 10. So how can we start from that young age and also in school to learn out about this?
If you find this answer, tell my wife, because she always has 1,000 notifications of unupdated applications. Like this is one of our top 3 reasons to fight. I don't know, for young people, I guess it will be different. I think when your daughter reaches 2025, security will have a very different opinion. So I don't know. Maybe it will be very natural for people to do it. I don't know. But today, I think it's this denial syndrome, the thing that, oh, I'm never gonna die. It's like, why should I go to the doctor? I'm okay now. Why should I have pay attention to my diet? Right? Nothing will happen to me. I think it's a human thing. I wish it would change, but I'm not sure. So that's why I also said about the never leave a good incident go to waste. Sometimes people need to be taken. That's a pessimist view. I'm a pessimist. I'm sorry.
I think it's also convenience. I have, if some of you have iPhones, you might have seen that the latest upgrade, the iOS, requires 8 gigabytes of free space on your mobile, 7 point something.
Let me see.
7 point on phones that have 60, it's more than 10%. It's huge. So when you make security impossible to follow, that's what happens. You get notifications, you never upgrade, and so you have 2 ways. Either you force it, and everybody gets his iPhone shut down, restart it. If it's not enough memory, you wipe out whatever. That doesn't work. Or you let people decide, which is, I think, what we have to do, right? It's and and this is why also sometimes it's difficult. Not for the newer generations, maybe, because they grew up with phones, with computers, and so they understand more and more. But for older generations who haven't been exposed to those technologies, and all of a sudden you ask a grandmother to delete her grandchildren's photos so she can update her iPhone, never she'll do that. So I think this is also the thing, like people working in security need to be mindful about the usage so that it can be followed by everyone. So is it 8.6, 7?
I think it's that's why I believe more in security controls than awareness. You can go that far with awareness, but eventually you have to be able to update the
I
iPhone
think
if you
they
have
should
to.
be hand in hand.
Yeah,
You need
you
to
have
have
to do
awareness,
both.
and then you have to help people and empower them with the tools that could help them to give them like alert or tap on shoulder when they are selecting the wrong, for instance, classification. Or we have the tool now, we can use them to empower the people. So we should not expect everyone knows everything. We need to have a training, and we need to provide a tool for them, and it should be simple. If it's not simple, no one will do that. Even you buy and invest a lot on technology, but if it's not easy to use, or it's not practical for people, they won't use. But if I get your question correctly, is about new generation knowledge about the computer. And I think we are living in a digital era, and you will amaze how children work with the smartphones, with the tablets, with the computer. So they knew a lot more than the other generation, even from the parents, they knew a lot more. And if they are interested, I think there are a good planning and good education process for children in tech. And you can find those resources. There are some free resources available online for children who are interested to know how computer works with a simple explanation. So probably if you search for it, you can find the reliable sources for those information. We are living in digital era, so it might be, it shouldn't be that difficult to find, but it's good. And this generation are different. They grow up with the technology. So
Amazing, thank
And
you.
my second question is, how can we make company understand that cybercrime are smart and we need to be like how smart they are?
You tell them stories. The story I usually tell about that is how, the ransomware gangs have amazing customer support. Like you can contact them, they can solve the problem. As I mentioned before, the Akira ransomware, I don't know if you have heard of it, they had that level of customer support that they were asking for. They were doing research on your company, and they were asking different ransom depending on how wealthy you are as a company. So they didn't have like give us 10 bitcoins and that's it. It was like, okay, you give me 1, you can give me 100. So I think when you tell these stories about that it happens and how they act, I don't see any other way. There's so much coverage in the media nowadays. People know. I think they really know that it exists. People know that it happens. Maybe they don't know how far it goes.
I think the reason for that denial is think that it's not happening for us. And one important aspect of security is everyone's responsibility. It's not just the security team's responsibility. And that culture needs to get expanded in the organizations, in the social life, because everyone is responsible. I have one example from my private life. I have a kid, he's really intelligent in computer as well. He came and said, I want to have this game because everyone in my class playing that game. And I explain about how they are using your data. Have you read their privacy statement? I know no one read because it's like 100 pages and you want to use the tool, you just accept. And a lot of people are not reading the term. So I was amazed that one day he came and said, I want this application. And I said, I am busy now. Go and read the privacy statement and come and explain to me. And I didn't think he will do that. He did. And he backed to me and said, I don't want this application. I asked why. He said, because they collect my data and share the data with third parties. And I don't want that. So new generation are smart.
How old are
And
you,
You tell
son?
this kid I'm high
Yeah,
risk.
exactly.
He's 12 years now.
What sort of training have you done? How much security training?
Great, I am proud
Wow,
mom.
I don't know. Whatever you did, I'll come and steal.
I do the same thing with my daughter.
You don't have to read the privacy notice?
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
in
Okay.
English. He's really good at it.
I think that's all about educating people and give the awareness about what will happen. The company there are a lot of available public data about the cybercrime and how they are impacted different organizations, how they are outsmart our system, bypass the security controls and so on. So I think the most important things to make them understand is talk with the fact, with the example, because people understand, exemplify things better. It's tangible, so they can understand and they could relate. It's my suggestion to make some scenario that is relatable for them.
Okay, thank you.
Amazing. Any other questions?
Yeah, myself, Pawan. So I would like to answer our first question actually, in my point of view. And yeah, what you said is also correct. Am I audible clearly? Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah, great, thanks. So yeah, what you said is also correct actually, that nowadays the students, I mean, the whole world is an AI and digital world. Yes, I think the best way is students should use this technology in a wiser way, but who will tell that they have to use in a wiser way? That's important. I think you did the right way because you guided your children or whatever. So I think somebody should be there to direct them in a proper way actually. So that is important. Technology is there. Even technology is actually helping us to create the virus as well. Even the ChatGPT, it clearly tells us how to create in a step-by-step manner. So the person actually, one person, I think that person is nothing but teacher or lecturer or even the parent. So I think we are the best persons to teach our children. I think that's the way I think they can learn it. And for me, my personal question is, yeah, I'm a basically mobile developer and a mobile architect as well. I do develop iOS apps and Android apps in React Native and then Flutter and everything. So basically, how to shift? I mean, I'm not saying that I'm going to shift to the security roles, but if we want to switch from this technical roles to the security roles, is any better way that? I mean, because my underlying point is, if you don't have experience, companies won't welcome us generally, isn't it? And that it's a security thing. So, but how to gain the experience again? That's again a question, because we're already having 10 years of experience in developing mobile applications and all, but not in the security. But if we are interested in security, but how to switch our complete path from tech to security? So I think that's one of the questions. Am I
can go.
Yeah.
If you want to pass your career, if I understand your question correctly, you're asking about changing career path from tech to security. So you need to educate yourself with the security, and then because you have some background in tech, maybe you have a better understanding. For instance, in your case, you are the mobile developer. So if you go for a mobile security, then it's tangible to your area, it's close to your tech area, and it's understandable. So you can empower yourself with the security knowledge in that one. And if you find it's the way you want to go and you are passionate about, you can follow your path and your dream, whatever it's your goal to reach. But I don't think it's impossible. There are a couple of training, and if you have that passion about the security, and I think it's go for it. Life is short. Go for what you dream for, but watch what you are dreaming for.
I have people that I transitioned, almost all the companies that I have been in, we transition people into security roles. People who are developers and then became security engineers, people who were IT governance and they transitioned to GRC specialists. So first of all, you have to have a little bit of an interest yourself, and then you reach out. It is much easier if the organization is, I wouldn't say big, but not a 50 people startup, right? Maybe it's easier actually there if you're jack of all trades. You tag along in a team and you try to persuade the manager of the team. You say, okay, here's my interest, here's my passion. And then they will find, hopefully, they will find some, if you're a mobile developer, they will say, okay, let's start by doing some mobile testing. Let's put you in application security, in SDLC type of work. And you bring to me the what's called the perception of a mobile developer. Actually, in my previous role, the first person I recruited was a mobile developer who told me like, hey, I'm interested in security. I don't know if I want to do it or not. What should I do? I'm like, come along. The first task is we need to create an SDLC, a security development lifecycle. And I said, okay, here's what's the industry standard. Shut it down. And then let's have a discussion. It took us, I don't know, 3-4 weeks. he kept on complaining, and the more he was getting into it, the more he was reading about it, he was like, oh, this requirement actually makes sense. I hate it. Okay. I keep on adding it in this. So, but you have to have a little bit of time as a manager, a bit of strong interest as a person, not get disappointed. And it's difficult if you're very senior in your something, and then you go to a new role that you're very junior. Like it's a confidence. Like you really have to work with your self-confidence, actually.
Like you said, both of them.
Any other questions?
Yes. Hello, Bernard. I used to work with him. And just to give some context, we used to work with awareness training. And I think you already know my opinion on the KPI, how many people have completed the awareness training and how useful it is. So my question is specifically about KPIs or KRIs, as you might prefer, since you like talking about risk. We've just been talking about how our organizations have different roles and departments. And if you're a CMO or a chief marketing officer, I think the KPIs are pretty much set in stone. Same thing if you're a CFO, right? Everyone knows what return on investment means. And I would even argue that if you're a CTO, availability is number one, right? As a CISO, or when you're reporting to the board and management, what are the top 10 KPIs or KRIs that you guys like using that are not availability based or based on availability, or the classic mean time to patch KPIs? And I can give one example. So we've just been talking about leaked credentials and insiders threats. Like, how do you connect that to a KPI? Just as an example.
I could answer this question. If anyone of us could answer this question, we would have, we would be like rich people. First of all, it's very difficult. Like every organization chooses to do it differently. You can show like participation, you can show impact, you can show like, okay, I'm not going to tell you about awareness, but I'm going to tell you when I did the simulation, how it worked, or how many incidents we had since we launched, before we launched this and after we launched this. Every organization has to find out KPIs that make sense for them. I was in a closed group with other CISOs, and I presented to them a very elaborate idea that I have about KPIs, and they all looked at me. I'm like, you're wasting your time. This is too advanced. Like, you will spend a lot of time. Eventually, just pick 3 and go to the board and just stick to these 3. I was disappointed, but it's very. I think they have already. They all have scars about KPIs reported to management and what works and doesn't work. I think if you can tie something to money, if you find a way to tie it to money, first of all, tell me. Second, yes, that would be a good thing.
I think it depends on the story you want to tell. You can take any KPI. If it holds with your story, your strategy, it makes sense, I think. Then making it how much money we've saved by doing that. Yeah, if you're changing one technology to another, you can compare, but it's like asking yourself, how much accident did I avoid by changing my motor oil last week? No idea. You just do it because you need to do it, because you know that if you don't do it, you might have a problem. And I think this is also the story. You said we need to invest in security and all, but it's also an insurance in a sense. If you don't do what you need to do, if you don't do the basics, you know you might have problems. Is it a risk you want to take or not? Up to the company to decide. But I think this is all get back to what story I want to tell and what kind of risk I want to expose.
I think instead of having one KPI, you should have a trend. Whatever KPI you choose, you should show the trend. So I believe in being better today than being that you were yesterday. So whatever KPI you show, if you can show that they're going, well, either up or down, depending, that you have a good trend, I think that's the important thing. So choose something that has a trend.
And from my perspective, it's there is no one size fit all. It's depend on the organization culture and how the things work in that organization. So you need to see what is the highest risk for that organization, and then from my perspective, you need to address those, and your KPI should be for reducing or mitigating the highest risk. And then if you have an example of number or estimation of number and you can measure it, then it will be good. Because when you go for a KPI, first of all, when you are going to this kind of discussion, you need to read the room. You cannot explain a lot details about technical things regarding the incident might happen, the technology, and so on. So your KPI needs to be relevant, addressing the what are the valuable assets of the organization and how is the culture in that organization with dealing with security. And then you can define it in a way that was tangible and understandable for the organization and for the top management to make a decision, and of course put the investment on that. So it's all about how you tell your story.
And to the audience, it's the business, as she said, and the audience. So I say there's the board truth, the board KPI, then there's the management KPI, and then there's the ground truth, the real KPI. So you communicate different KPIs to different people.
Amazing. Any other questions?
Hey, we have put a lot of emphasis on educating the users, educating ourselves. Let me turn the table around just for a second, because you all seem pretty high on the food chain. Do we need high-level certifications like CISSP for a position like a pen tester? There has been a lot of what you can call job descriptions where they say nice to have. So now pen testers, middle level, you can say IT security engineers, they're wanting to do the certifications. Companies are, of course, prioritizing them, and it's creating a skill gap, I would say. So do we really need those? And if not, what companies need to do about that?
No. It was a yes or no question for the first. So answer is no. And what was the second question?
It's creating a skill gap now, because if you are below 5 years, you will get a CISSP associate, not a full CISSP. So if a company says nice to have a CISSP, that means the person who has above 5 years experience, he's going to get the priority, not the CISSP associate. So what the company should do, if it's not necessary, then why put it? Like I said, you all seem higher on the food chain. So that's why I want to know your perspective from that side.
The answer is, for me, just talking about myself, answer is no. But at some point when you're doing recruitments, it's about choosing and comparing, right? So you have a lot of things on the table. You have the skills, you have the personality, you have millions of criterias. And at some point, when you still don't know, because things are really tight, you can look at certifications. It can be kind of comparing things. For my end, at least, just this is really personal, this is not the first thing I look at. I look more about the experience, because you can have certifications, but how many people have diplomas and they've been 2 hours to the lecture and then they just passed to get there. So for me, what matters is at least more the skills and the experience rather than only the certification.
Stolen so many times your side. So.
For me, that is the certificate. It sometimes shows the person has the ability, but it's not the main criteria. The skills and willingness to learn is the criteria every recruiter or every manager need to consider. For me, it's two these things are important. Person will to learn and want to adapt, because you are not hiring one person for a year. You are hiring to have it for a longer time, because when the new people join your team, you have a time for onboarding, and it's investment. You invest time on the people, and you need to reach the point to get the fruitful. They need to learn your culture, learn your industry, and then can work. And so learn for myself is how the people willing to learn, because it's more important the personality of the people and how skillful they are. I don't count on certificate to bring much things on my table, because the certificate at the end of the day is not going to solve the problem. If you have a certificate and you need to none of those certificates are forever. So you need to get the new certification. So that means you need to continue learning. If I had a certificate and don't do the same things, the same skill, for instance, I have a cybersecurity certification, but I'm not doing in cybersecurity for like last 3 years, and my certificate is outdated. But that certificate doesn't bring any value in your resume, even though you put it there, but it doesn't have any value because you haven't been that much close with that area. You haven't worked with that area. So sometimes, as Bernard mentioned, when you have too close competence, that might be one of the winning, but I don't believe on that. At least it's not my choice to pick.
My answer is absolutely not.
Three no's.
Not just no, absolutely. I actually think if you have, especially if you have too many certificates, that's a bad thing. That means you're wasting your time trying to prove something to somebody or put your ego up, or something is wrong there in general, especially if you're not so many years in the industry. There is one case that I can excuse the certifications is if your scenario, if you're trying to break into security and you're not given opportunities, like working in a company and blah, blah, doing transitioning and all this, and you're like, okay, I have to prove somehow. So I remember I was recruiting for positions that had the requirement to have cloud security. And I interviewed a lot of people who told me, you know, I started taking the self-training course of AWS. I'm taking this certification course. I'm not finishing it. I don't have money to give the certificate itself, but I'm studying it, and I have not. This is for me very valuable. So don't bother taking the certificate. You can study or whatever.
I just want to add that it's my personal experience. I moved to Sweden like 2 years ago. I was not getting calls for security positions. Then I did my CISSP. Now I work as a GRC. And not to call you out on anything, Bernard, but you have an IT security engineer position open, and it also has a nice to have CISSP. So that's what I'm trying to say, that creates a you can say race to get those certifications, because when we see that we are not getting calls back, then I have to go and do a CISSP, because then I don't know that the person with a CISSP, even though it does not relate to the position, let's say for a pen tester, I have to do it so I can get a call back.
And you can quote me on that. Yes, there is in the job ads, all of them nice to have, because as I said, at some point you also need to be able to make a choice. And I can tell you that in the processes, there are people with certifications and people without certifications, because still what matters is kind of the story, the experience, and sometimes you get just a CV with 2 titles and 1 certification. There is no letter, nothing interesting, nothing important in it. So this is not the only thing. You can't say, I have to be called back because I have that. This is not a token of falling back. I'll go with that. But indeed, at some point in the process, it can make a difference. Does it make a difference from the start? I don't think so.
Thank you.
Hello. I want to talk a little bit about George's question regarding competence in security spectrum. It sounded like you all landed in being adaptive is a good. We're working with a constant moving area, and my question to you is, what do your companies do to keep those adaptive profiles around when they start? Or because I think that adaptive person maybe usually can get bored. It's a downside of it. So what do you do concretely in our companies to handle this?
It's for all of us, right?
Yeah, it's for all of it.
When you need to be a smart manager, you need to understand what is the need of your staff. If someone are willing to learn and show how they are advanced, they need to promote them. You cannot keep them, because the moment you don't recognize their ability to do the good job, it's the moment you lose that. And currently finding the experienced, competence person in the security might take between 6 to 9 months. So it's a huge gap when you are finding the new competence that you can rely on. So I think it will be loose if the manager not reading that and not putting attention on the people performance and progress. I think that needs to be managed in a proper way. So from the perspective of what I have experienced, we always read the what is needed. We have always one-to-one. We have a performance planning, the goal, what is your objective, what you want to achieve this year, and how I can support you to achieve your goal. Because we want to keep our personnel happy, because the work will, business will done if you are happy and you are satisfied with the job you are doing. Otherwise, you will move to somewhere else. So I think all this is one of the soft skills any manager should have, not just pushing you and then leave you.
Different people want different type of competencies. So some people want to go from individual contributors to manager towards the manager track. Some others want to go from one type of security job to another, like from a GRC person to a security operations person. Or someone else wants to do GRC, but in different segments of the company, like Schibsted has many segments, right? In our company, for example, we have the vehicles that are autonomous, then we have the cloud platform that is more software, and we have the charging infrastructure. So you can move across the business areas. So you have to listen. The person has the responsibility to tell, of course, right? But you as a manager, you have to listen and you try to adopt. You cannot make everybody happy the way they want, the moment they want, but you can create a plan for them and say, okay, listen, right now you're working on X, we want you to work on X a bit more, but let's start giving you this type of track of tasks so that you can move to either another business area or to another role inside security. We always are under budget, we're always understaffed, sorry, so we always need more people, and it's our job to find, okay, this person, what other job can they do?
I think, yeah, it has been said mostly, it's always good to keep the people because they have, I won't talk about it's expensive to recruit, blah, 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 but I think people need to grow in what they're doing, but also have the next step in front of them. Like we need to understand where the people want to go. What do they want to work with? In cybersecurity, there are so many topics that we can work upon, that we can touch upon, that I don't think that as long as someone wants to discover, and that's of course doable within the team, I don't see reasons to prevent that from happening.
I can tell a personal story that relates back to the question of the previous gentleman. So I was working as a security specialist in a company, and then it was itching me for years. I want to be a pen tester. I want to be a hacker. I want to be able to break systems. And I have done some parts of it, but I'm like, I need to get a course and I need to get a certification. So I got penetration tester, advanced penetration tester, reverse engineer. Like I got all these certifications and then I never used them. Because eventually when I was coming back to the company, sometimes there was no exact thing to do. And then also when they were putting me in projects that I was supposed to do the pen test, I was like, okay, but I want to do this other thing right now, which is whatever, like architecture and big thinking. And then I realized, like, it doesn't matter how many certifications. It doesn't matter how much my managers tried to help me. I actually didn't know what I really wanted and what I really was good at.
Yeah.
So I had also other people who they were asking, like, I need this course, I need this certificate. I was arguing with them for a couple of months. Then eventually I gave them what they wanted, and then they never finished it. They never took the certificate. They never did the course. Or I put them in an assignment, and they never finished the assignment.
And I think as managers, you have also to be mindful about if someone every 3 months comes and say, okay, I want to explore that and that without never finishing, it means there's another problem underlying.
Yeah.
I have a little bonus question. How would an elevator pitch to your friends or your family sound like, talking about IT security for personal view, like from their perspective? Just a short elevator pitch.
About what we do?
Yeah, or about why they would maybe invest in having a password vault or going into more of a personal view for family or friends.
If it's family, I would tell them, I work with computers. I know that you could do that. It's not very elevative, but that's the truth, actually.
How would you say?
Well, It's different. You need to know your audience and what they are interested to hear. For some, I mean, for sometimes when I work as a CISO in other company, people seeing me as a hacker. And when I want to pick my kids from a school, every kid comes and asks me, I want to be hacker, how I can hack Roblox and get much Robux I want. So it's depend on your audience, I would say, and but mostly there are misconceptual when you are working in security. So people will think the different things related to cybersecurity and thinking about, and sometimes also seeing you as a heroes, which is not true. Sometimes it's true, but not always. But my elevator pitch with the family usually is not saying anything because it brings a lot of expectation.
Have you seen these pictures that say how I see myself, how my friends see me, how my family see me? I'll tell you. So I would like to see myself as a hacker, right? A cool, hoodie and then what was it? Like 3-4 years ago, it was exactly when COVID was about to relax. My first daughter, she was like 3-4 years old, and somebody asked, like, "Do you want to do what Daddy does?" And I'm like, "Okay, let's see that now. What does Daddy do?" He's like, "Daddy sits in front of the computer all day and says, you do this, you do this, you do this." So my image of a hacker and a security completely crashed. So it doesn't matter what we think, it's also how people see us. Yeah, I mean, I think the coolest part of my job, and that's where my heart is more, is when you have incidents, when you're that's the coolest thing. It's the James Bond, the small boy that wants to be James Bond. Because it really, if you think about it, if you are in a very serious incident, it is potentially that type of James Bond-ish. And eventually when the incident is over, maybe most people in the company will not know, or outside for sure. And sometimes if you're in a very sensitive environment, you cannot even talk about it, which is like, So I don't feel very much envy of the people who work in government and these, secret agencies and all this that do super cool stuff, but they can never talk about it.
Amazing. I feel like we may have to stop the Q&A there just because we're going a bit over. If you do have questions for our audience, we will be networking and mingling afterwards. On the tables, you can see that there is a QR code. This has been recorded. So if you want to listen back or check out some of our other episodes, you can see it there. Just a reminder as well, as Sophie mentioned at the start, Schibsted are hiring. So if you or someone you know is looking for a new role, we will have a QR code afterwards with all the available positions for you to check out. But thank you all for being an amazing guest. Thank you for being an amazing panel. Can we give our guests an amazing round of applause?
Yes.
Thank you.